Hello and welcome to another episode of Insight Out, a time where we come together to bring you expert analysis on the markets and people who are a part of the energy industry, helping make the changes we see every day. So glad you are joining us today and look forward to having a great conversation as we have a great guest that's going to be joining myself and Assaad as we have our conversation today. So thank you for joining us. So before we bring in our guest and bring Assaad in, want to go ahead and bring Shelby Dumaine in to talk about how you can provide your feedback as well as live questions for our conversation today. So good to see you, Shelby. Good afternoon.
Hey, Michael. Good afternoon to you as well. And I'm also really excited for the conversation we have ahead of us. Definitely a really great guest we have planned. So if you watching at home would like to submit any questions or comments at any point throughout the show that you have for either Assaad or for our guest who we'll introduce here in a moment, you can comment those in the comment section on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, wherever you're watching from. I am in the comment section throughout the entire show. I'm reading everything. I love seeing where everybody's from, for example. So if you want to let us know where you're watching from, maybe as a practice round for later when you have a question or a comment, then you can do so now. And I love seeing where in the world all of our viewers are tuning in from. So again, like I said, you can put any of your questions or comments there in the comment section on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube. And later, if you have an idea for something you'd like to see on the show, or maybe a comment or a question about a past show, you can still reach out to us. We have two different ways you can find us. The first is you can email us at askassad@nov.com. So that email is there on the screen. You can reach out to us there. And the other way is you can give us a phone. If you'd rather just call us real quick and drop a quick message, you can do that as well. The number is country code +1 346 223 4799. And that number is on the screen now as well. And then I wanted to mention one last thing. So if you wanted to watch any of our past episodes of Inside Out or even NOV Live, which is the show we do earlier in the day on Wednesdays, you can see all past episodes on nov.com/live. And again, if you have any questions or comments on any of those episodes, you can email us or give us a call at the email and the phone number I mentioned just a moment ago. So I look forward to seeing everybody in the comments. Oh, I'm seeing now, we see Houston. I see some people from Bradford, Louisiana, Colombia. So lots of really great places. I'm very thankful for all of our viewers out there all throughout the world. So I look forward to seeing you in the comment section.
All right. Thanks, Shelby. And with that, we will go ahead and bring in our resident expert, Assaad Mohanna, NOV's Director of Business Strategy. Assaad, good to see you on this fine Wednesday in January. We are powering through the month. It's like the days apparently don't get shorter as the years go on. So we'll have to grapple them and enjoy them and take them as they come. But good to see you today.
I tell you, good to see you too on this nice cold week in Houston. It's nice to see that winter is back. And speaking of how January is moving real quick, I was telling somebody I hadn't seen in a while, Happy New Year, just yesterday, and they're like, that was like 12 days ago.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, get with the program, Assaad.
That's too old now. So it's moving quick.
Good. So well, I know that one of the things that consistently is quick are the changes that are happening in the energy industry. I truly thought there'd be a week where I'd come on the show and say, hey, Assaad, I'm sorry, it doesn't look like anything's happened, but I've yet to be disappointed, and I know that you've got some good perspective on that as well.
Yeah, no dull moment in the energy market there, Michael. I think what we've seen the last week is a jump in Brent and WTI crude prices to levels not seen in the past year, and it's mainly been driven by an announcement by Saudi Arabia after reaching an agreement with OPEC Plus on further cutting production by another 1 million barrels unilaterally by Saudi Arabia. That was a surprise to the market, which signaled that OPEC Plus is still a bit flexible on the cuts, as opposed to what they had alluded to earlier or late in last year, that cuts would probably go away. The other indication that we're seeing out there, really some news came from the American Petroleum Institute, or API, on the crude stocks reducing by about 5.8 million barrels just yesterday, which is good. We want oil stocks to drop. We're not talking about stock market. We're talking about stocks, reserves of oil that are surplus inventory, dropping by 5.8, as opposed to the expected 2.3, signaling an increase in demand, which is really good for us and good news to the market. We also heard from some shale producers over the previous week, Michael, about what will recovery look like. And one prominent shale producer said, "We're not in a hurry to increase production. We're only planning for maximum 5% in 2021. Kind of certifying and reassuring the new behavior that's coming out of this new environment on oil and gas, which is also reassuring to us. So overall, I think analysts are expecting a $60 per barrel by end of year, a better 2021, and increased by demand, all really pushed by, first of all, the stimulus efforts passed by the U.S. government, the vaccines that are being rolled out, although that may take some time. But as things start moving, people start getting on the road, trade picks back up, some relief to the economy and the market are expected to boost demand. So it's all good news.
Good. All right. Well, appreciate the insight and perspective, Assaad. And speaking of insight, of course, we have the opportunity and privilege of having a special guest today. We have Mr. Dale Bradford, who is the VP of Global HSC at Murphy Oil Corporation. So, Dale, thank you for joining us today. All right, glad you're on. Yeah, I think we're not able to hear you there. I know this is, I think, one of the.
With my mute.
There it is. Yep, it's the classic. You're muted. If I'm the king of getting those, so don't worry. You won't dethrone me on that one. Well, good. Well, thanks for joining us, Dale. And maybe I'll kick off our conversation here. So I know that you've got a great background, obviously in the health, safety, environment space, and have a very unique perspective, being able to run a great program there in Murphy Oil. So as you kind of look back on 2020, certainly folks in your position has really had a lot of conversations, a lot of things happening last year. What was that like for you in your role when you kind of look back last year?
Yeah, well, great question. Like everybody else on the call and listening in today, it's been a year. Last year was a year of tremendous change. Started off the year thinking that our industry was headed in a substantially different direction than we realized it was just a few months later. So that we spent a lot of time just responding and reacting, unfortunately, there at the beginning to what's going on, and trying to do the right thing to support our business and keep our business afloat, keep our business and survive, essentially, the downturn. When the initial shock of responding to that from a business point of view had passed, we moved on to the next challenge. And in my role, a lot of that time was spent in just trying to do the best we could to make sure our health and safety of our employees was protected. Dealing with a pandemic, we had that in our plan. We had that in a book on the shelf, but it was fairly dusty. Dealing with pandemic is not our strength. So we we've dusted that off, made some big improvements, and worked hard just to protect our people and to protect our business from COVID. Try to keep our operations running smoothly. It's a big year in that respect.
It's probably a big challenge for the whole organization, readapting and creating new methods of communicating and reaching out.
Absolutely. That's an experience, for just today, StreamYard, this app we're using to have this call today is new to me, but yeah, a year of adapting and changing, and I think in many ways changing for the better. We've struggled, of course, but some of the capabilities we have now to truly work remotely in an effective way. We used to say we had that, and we did. Our operations around the world be effective, and we'd have folks working from home or working from different countries and whatnot, but it certainly wasn't a core competency. And I'm really pleased with how we've managed to deal with that in our business. I think it surprised some of us. I'll admit, even me, it surprised me how well that not just Murphy, but the industry has been able to operate in a sort of a remote work from home environment.
Yeah, it's amazing how we've been propelled 5 or 10 years into the future and been made to adapt to things that we didn't think we'd need right away.
That's right.
Dale, I know you don't need an introduction to many in our industry, but for those who are new to Dale and to Murphy Oil, I'll take a stab at it. You add what I've missed, but I know, first of all, Murphy carries vast operations or assets in unconventionals, Eagle Ford, Canada, as well as international markets in the offshore space, Gulf of Mexico, both sides, Vietnam, Australia, Brazil. You bring a vast background and experience in drilling, internationally and domestically. Your background, if I'm not mistaken, is with BP and BHP.
There's some of there, BP, BHP, and Murphy for the past 13, 14 years. So
it's great to have you on.
One of the great things about our industry, I just have really enjoyed that career. Just the fact that we can see that breadth of the world and see the different cultures of the world, see how business is done around the world. I think it's hard to find industry like ours in that sense, that we would have that opportunity.
Yeah, definitely checked a lot of boxes in my book, Dale. It's a lot of places to be part of, a lot of functions to cover. So I want to kind of tell our audience a little bit why, what triggered this conversation, what's specific and unique about it is your perspective on and visibility on break-even prices and the economics behind the oil barrel today and how it breaks down. I think, talking about your experience and what you bring, I think you've seen the ups and downs, and the last few years really are not alien to what you've experienced. What are your thoughts on break-even prices today? We're talking about $57 today for Brent, 53 for WTI, but that's not sure to remain the case.
Sure. So break-even prices, understandably, and for good reason, like the first question that most people think of when they think of our industry. They don't necessarily think of all the great things about our business. They just want to know what the bottom line is on that break-even, and it's one of the fun parts about that I've learned over the years is it's very much a moving target, and it means very different things to different parts of the organization, parts of the industry, right? So what works, a break even that seems to work for one operator in one particular basin certainly will not be the same for another. And an E&P operator's view of what's good from a break-even point of view is not going to be the same as a service provider. So there's a lot of perspective that change that position. But I think, and so I can't comment about that subject break-even in a way that applies across the board. But I can talk about what I've seen at Murphy for the past number of years and what we're thinking right now, and maybe that'll help provide some context, Assaad, as to get to what you're asking about. But one of the moving target pieces about it, of course, is that the prices of our product is not the only thing changing. The prices of services and goods that we rely upon change, and unfortunately, any conversation or any discussion we have about a break even to a company like Murphy invariably has that underlying implication that somebody else is suffering or potentially suffering. Service provider, for example, who's not receiving the same price for that they needed in the past. So it's all linked together. In Murphy's case, and this is after dealing with the ups and downs of 2020 and responding to that in a way that I think the industry has, of reducing costs drastically and trimming back activity drastically. Our break even is somewhere around $40 a barrel. And break even, though, what it means is just the ability not to go into more and more debt. It doesn't necessarily mean we're making great money. It means that we are not dipping further into debt. When you look at Murphy has a good perspective of having both a pretty active U.S. and Canada shale business and an offshore business, and the differences between the two are pretty big. For example, starting from the operations cost or the op cost point of view, in the land operations in the U.S., it might cost us $5 a barrel to operate a lease, keep it running and producing. Offshore, the facilities might cost us that operating cost might be triple that, $14 or $15 a barrel. But that's not the break even for the company. The break even for the company has to absorb the taxes that we pay and the dividends we pay our stockholders are very important, and pay our salaries in the offices around the world. Our G&A is what we call that. Interest on the debt is a big one.
Yep.
And depreciation of our assets, and all these costs go into the bucket. So Murphy ends up at about $40 for a break even after all of those costs are concerned. So it's a pretty big gap between that $5 for shale, for example, and a $5 lease operating expense to a $40 break even. A lot of costs that are sandwiched in there.
Yeah, and to your point, really, when we're trying to nail down what is the break even, it's gonna vary vastly from one player to the other, one basin to the other. So it's pretty difficult. I think what's common though is that everybody coming out of the downturn is going to look at every possible means to reduce those smaller costs as an aggregate.
Sure. Yeah, that's true. When folks are trying to come to grips with this question, there's a couple of big ones there that we've already mentioned, like why would one operator have a different break-even number than the other? So the example I gave of offshore versus onshore, Murphy's $40 break-even is an aggregate for the whole company. Our break-even will be lower, a little bit lower for onshore, perhaps. So it's one company to another, obviously a big difference there. But there's also, think of the other differences that are under the surface for example, commodity hedging. So hedging is a tool, an insurance policy, or a tool that some operators used, where they essentially commit to sell certain portion of their oil barrels at a certain price. The upside being that the bank commits to take those barrels even if the going commodity rate's lower. They take the barrels at that rate, but the downside being, the seller is cut out of any upside in the oil price. So you'll see huge differences in reaction between company A, B, and C based on how they are hedged. It's not a general rule that shale players are more heavily necessarily hedged than offshore players, but it's maybe it's headed that way. But gas players gas companies will hedge differently than oil companies, and
Right.
it's all over the map there. So that it's obviously a huge factor if that oil price is hedged or locked in.
Yeah.
Change.
Yeah. And on that, maybe I want to push a bit further into the how does this apply to what recovery brings us, or what's it going to look like? I know we've been seeing, in 2020, accelerated market consolidation in the form of mergers, in the form of bankruptcies, in the form of asset write-offs, a lot of that. I guess, could you shed some light on what's that going to look like in terms of operators' behavior after the consolidation? Is that really it? Is all we need is big companies merging together? What is the general behavior going to be?
No, definitely we can see the advantages and the medium and long-term benefits of some of that consolidation, both on service side and E&P side. A couple of cautions I'll throw out on that. One thing to bear in mind is that those consolidations will hopefully bear fruit in the medium to long term. That's the objective. But in the short term, those of you who have been involved in one of those consolidations, that things can be quite rough. So in the short term, do we really see those benefits quickly, or does it take those consolidating companies time to iron out the mechanics and the logistics of coming together? I think that it's sometimes just from because I have a strong operational background. I think about day-to-day work in the field, and I see how those consolidations probably don't have an immediate effect.
Sure.
But it gets to, you and I have talked about this before, Assaad. One of the things that, based on Murphy's history, when we see prices, when we see the commodity price change, there's a latency or a delay in our response to it, and I think it's fairly logical, as nimble as we like to think we are, as Murphy likes to think we are, a relatively small company. The fact remains that there's a couple of steps there that have to take place. First, we have to realize that we have to decide that the price change is real. And I'm sure you're not surprised to hear how much discussion there would be and hand-wringing, frankly, about that. Are the current prices today? We've seen a recovery in the last month or so. Is this here to stay?
Right.
And I think it's natural to be very suspicious, and so we got to allow the industry time to come to grips with that fact, and then once we come to grips with that, then we have to start making our plans, and our changes in plans take a quarter or two to actually come to fruition. So what does Murphy need to see? Murphy needs to see 40 to break even. Murphy needs to see somewhere around 50 to consider growing again by drilling more wells and actually spending capital. $50 would help us do that. How long do we need to see 50 before we make that decision? Our history shows that that our response is delayed by a year or so.
Oh, wow.
To changes when you really look at it on paper, and by the time we make up our mind that it's really there, that the price change is there to stay, and we start changing our investment direction, it might take a while. It might take a year.
Yeah, gain trust in the market, stabilize prices, take the right decisions.
Then approach the market, services and otherwise, looking for a solution, go through the planning process, all of that. It just, there's a latency, there's a delay that's natural there. So I think it's common sense, but for some reason we don't talk about it that often that way.
Yeah. That's really good insight. I think, sometimes we fail to appreciate the power of time in recovery. A change in price doesn't mean immediate change in demand or rig count's going to jump back up. There's that lag, just like there's a lag for investors in short or long cycles. There's a lag in implementation and operations. It really makes sense.
Yeah, it's hard to. The price of oil is. There's a lot of behind the scenes work that goes into that, obviously, and those contracts are all in the future, et cetera, et cetera. So, we spend a lot of effort with our marketing team at Murphy and looking at what are the fundamental things that are actually happening, not the oil price itself, but what's really happening. The last time I looked, for example, air travel or air miles flown globally were still at the end of December, or in the middle of December last time I looked, we're around 40% or high 30% down from February still. And they're on a path, those air miles travel are on a slowly increasing trend,
right?
Kind of looking like the same trend that you mentioned in your opening piece about the inventory reduction, oil inventory reduction. That slow trend is going in the right direction, but we're still not in the right place. Inventories are still far too high, and air miles traveled and other transportation related metrics are still too low, but improving.
Yeah.
We look at those things and we try to guess and try to decide when we're confident that those prices were firm enough to make a business decision.
So Dale, I know that we're starting to round out close to the top of the hour, but I wanted to briefly have a quick follow-up for you, just kind of getting some perspective. So, in essence, I guess kind of the word picture, the goalpost is kind of shifting in a way, and priorities have had to be changed and reshuffled. I know, of course, in the HSE space, let alone, as you said, with the operations and other considerations. So, I know you can't talk for other operators, but just on your observation, I mean, how do you feel? What do you feel that operators are really looking for, and how do you see service and equipment providers better aligning with those needs?
Yeah, it's the hardest question that I knew I was going to get asked. And
well, Assaad just gives it to me. He likes me to ask the hard question.
Did he punt that? I just honestly, I've talked with many people, including Assaad, about this in the past, and I really, to be honest, I really struggle to give a good answer that's going to make people feel great. I mean, let's face it, we. As an industry, one of the encouraging things Assaad mentioned was some of the shale players are now stating that their production goals for the year are to maintain or barely increase, which is encouraging for the market broadly. That's what Murphy's plan is. We plan to deliver a flat profile in 2021, or largely flat. So, that helps us to put our business in a stronger position, pay down debt, et cetera, and hopefully helps the market recover as well. But that flat production profile and that focus on lowering costs and being more efficient doesn't bode well, or doesn't really translate into a huge increase in demand from Murphy and other companies. And so I hate to say it, we're still looking for efficiency and low cost from our providers, and I don't think that's going away.
Yeah.
And I really don't think that's going away. It shouldn't. If the industry gets to any excess point of view again, or excessive behavior again, we'll just recreate the problem. I hope that we've learned something here, but no, we can't count on that, unfortunately.
So you mentioned learning, and one of the things that I enjoy is learning new ways of doing things.
Mm-hmm.
And so to that point, do you feel that the industry will potentially adopt or learn a new way of doing business that gets it away from the day rate model?
Assaad, you punted that question too.
I planted it for Michael.
I don't know what you guys are talking about, but
well, yeah, we talked about, we did a little preparing for this conference. I guess that one is interesting because I don't actually see that happening. I think, sorry to disappoint. I think day rate's here to stay. And the reason I say that is you talk about learning, Michael, and I've been in the industry 25 years, and not that long before I started, exploration and production companies believed that they should run their own drilling rigs, and they had their own fleets of rigs, and they believed that that a vertically integrated model made a lot of sense then. And later there were other efforts to do that, but that were smaller. But it used to be relatively common, and it didn't work very well. So we found that I think E&P companies found that their business drivers and their core competencies and skill sets were so different from what it took to operate a drilling contract business that they weren't really compatible. So they decided to split and return to that day rate model. And could we do it better if we tried now with what we know today? I'm sure we can improve. But there's no doubt in my mind. But I do think day rate, some iteration of day rate, is still going to be here.
Mm.
And to your point, Dale, I think day rate's biggest enemy is itself. It works so well. It's straightforward. It's easy, and easy business models stick. I've looked around in other industries, and with all genuinity here, both Michael and I are both business model fans, if you want to call that. So we kind of track what's working, what's not, and we try to pull successful stories from across industries. And well, there are some that are pretty fascinating. Complexity drives away just practicality.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's upon the individual contractors and operators to create the culture around day rate that enforces or empowers individuals to not just rent a rig for the day or a product or a service, but drive towards efficiency.
I think you're right. I mean, from a what you're saying, I think I hear you saying from a practical and pragmatic point of view, simplicity does win. And just from my own experience personally, we have the, whether we like it or not, we have the luxury, I suppose you could say, of a lower activity level right now. When we're blowing and going in the industry, we tend to have little time for contemplating and coming up with a better mousetraps, better solutions. And I've personally been involved trying to have variable compensation models with different service providers, and some of them have worked quite well, and some of them have not, and we've gotten mad at each other sometimes because we didn't envision outcomes that ended up happening. And so it's hard. It would be a great, now is a good time. 2020 and 2021 are going to be relatively low activity level. It's a great time to think about you'd have those blue sky days and look out at the blue sky out of the window, think about some of the ways we could do better. I don't think day rate's going away, but I think we can make improvements.
Well, that's great. That's good. Yeah. Assaad said, business model fans. He was being trying to be too cool for school. We're nerds in the business model department. So he's I'll if he's going to punt some questions over here, I'll take down the facade. He and I are nerds, and it's okay. It's okay. Good. Well, I appreciate the perspective, Dale. It's really really helpful and really a privilege to kind of get a peek into your world and kind of see how you view some of these things. One of the things I also like, of course, is getting some of the feedback from folks that are actually watching online and have taken time out of their day to join us. So wanted to see if we can pull Shelby Dumaine in to see if we can get a few of those questions over to Assaad and Dale and get some insight.
Absolutely. Now, I could say I can promise that none of these were planted. I can't promise that some of them aren't maybe a little trickier or some good, I won't say hard-hitting, but kind of hard-hitting questions. I really appreciate it. I think our audience outdid themselves today and asked some really great ones. This first one is one we actually get pretty often. I think we even talked about it with David Reed last week. But with different administrations coming up, whether state, federal, municipal, a lot of them proposing kind of a transition to maybe greener energy or different forms of energy. This comment was curious. How do you see that affecting North American production?
Wow. All right. Well,
I know. I'm sorry.
Not planted.
I think it's inevitable that it's going to have an effect on North American production. The administrations come and go. We at least in Murphy's case, we've certainly tried the best we can to understand what the new administration's intents are. So there's no doubt there'll be a change, policy change, just as there was at the previous administration change. I mean, to put it in perspective, though, the industry has been around for a very long time. Murphy, in particular, has been around for 70 years, I think, nearly as a publicly traded company. Our CEO was asked the same question. Roger Jenkins was asked the same question by the staff at a recent town hall, and he says, "Hey, we've been around for 70 years, and we will." And what we do, one of our jobs that we do is to adapt to changes in our business environment, and that's one of them. We may not like the changes, but we do know they won't be permanent. They'll change. So that's part of our job in life to respond to that. So yes, there'll be an impact. I don't think, at least from Murphy's point of view, we certainly don't think this is the end of the industry or a major turning point in the industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. I anytime we get that question, it sometimes sounds, or I think looking at it, it can sound kind of like, ooh, kind of scary. But I always love hearing the answers because it's very inspiring to me. Because you're right. I think seeing how the industry evolves is pretty incredible, and all the people working hard. So I appreciate you answering that one. I thought I'd start off with the hard one. This next one comes from Richard on LinkedIn. And he kind of first made the comment that, OPEC was maybe cutting production before COVID as prices were increasing. But what are your expectations of a natural 8-year cycle or natural 8-year cycles in general?
8-year cycles. Do we have those?
I wish it was that clear.
Yeah, if they're that clear, I've missed the boat.
Well, it's funny though, because that number's come up before. So my experience is only 25 years, and my dad was in the industry and still he's retired now, but he was in there for many years as well. And I guess it used to be around 8 years roughly that you'd expect a cycle to change. But I think the world is entirely different now, and certainly our experience over the past few years has been those cycles are much more abrupt and much more sudden. And I think it's because, well, gosh, we could go on and on, but it's probably because the world is a more connected place. And business in one region of the world is much more connected and reliant on business results in another. And so, I think that explains why demand and supply swing more quickly, and certainly in a pretty extreme way. Hopefully, this 2020 down cycle was unique in that we had two major things happening at once. I mean, how could we forget that OPEC was having a tough time coming to agreement at the beginning of 2020, started a little battle amongst themselves, and then along came COVID. Let's hope that two major negatives are what caused this downturn. But I don't expect 8-year cycles going forward. I don't plan my career, my retirement dates, or any of that based on cycles. I just think we have to be prepared as an industry for the variability and have that flexibility and try not to overreact in either direction.
And maybe I'll add, something you mentioned well earlier, Dale, and that's the lag between major events. The cyclicality of our industry, I think, is highly dependent on those many lags that we see in just how long cycles are or how short they are in shale, or the fact that these cycles, to your point, are shortening because of the fact that we're getting more connected, and to a certain extent we're cutting down that lag time. One thing that's related to Richard's question, I think, is how do you protect yourself from that cyclicality? And I think Murphy does it well. Some other players too, is the diversification of portfolio and how you don't put all your eggs in one basket, or you make sure that you're not just focused in North America, but also have that international exposure, which I think you guys do well.
It's got to help on the service side and commodity products and E&P, all sides. It's got to help to have that diversification, which is to protect yourself from the cycles. What's interesting though is as a public company, our shareholders, stakeholders, the markets seem to push us in the other direction. They tend to push for simplification of the business, splitting the business. For example, in the upstream side, very common over the last few years to split your marketing and your refining business away from your E&P business because it's simpler. But when those two companies or those elements were together, refining, marketing, and E&P were together, we had some natural dampening effect on the markets because those refiners do much better with the price of oil low, right? So we were, Murphy split that way, like a lot of companies have, and it's interesting to think about whether that's the right decision or not. Just for diversification, I think does help when it comes to cycles.
Right. I don't know if Michael and Shelby will let me to pass one more question. You've been exposed to a lot of the HSE world in the last, probably the peak of HSE, really. And really my question is about getting glued on the screen for the whole day, not having those natural breaks that we had in the office world. What do you do to manage that at the corporate level?
Well, I think what the corporate level, what Murphy's decided to do, is to try to encourage a bit of a balance. So even though things are tough with respect to COVID in the Houston area right now, as Houstonites know, we still keep our office open, and we ask, at least up till the end of the year, we were asking people to work 3 days in the office and to work 2 days from home to try to reduce the exposure here and help from the health side, but also try to encourage interaction in a limited way.
Yeah.
Appropriate distance, but encourage face-to-face interaction where it was possible. So that was our decision. Here in the last couple of weeks, we've been allowing folks to work from home more because of the spike in the Houston area. But in terms of the sanity and how to keep yourself sane, it is interesting. There is no, I'd like to say from a corporate company point of view, we were managing this, but we're not. That's falling on the individual. And I think I have to encourage anybody watching to keep in mind that everybody, your boss and your peers and your employees all know and are going through something similar to you, and a lot of them are struggling the same way you are with that. So I think there's a lot more understanding around the space now that folks say, well, this is hard. This is not easy. We can end up with a Teams or a Zoom call back to back to back to back for the entire day. We find ourselves working late at night. But be flexible with your employees and with your peers, and understand that stress that they're under too, and understand. And I think they understand too that you have to get away.
Right.
Get away. So we've left it up to the individual, and I think as a company collectively we're getting better. People are handling it better.
Yeah.
I'd say, we're seeing productivity that is great.
Of course.
And we're also seeing people working longer hours. I think you can measure that, and that's not necessarily a good thing, but they're working them at different times of the day.
Yeah.
Maybe they're working late or they're working early, but as far as productivity, we're doing great.
That's good.
So I'll ask this next question, kind of talking more on that sort of ebb and flow of the industry and how you can go from increases to decreases. So we actually had a question from Bo on LinkedIn, and he made the comment that he's looking to enter in the oil and gas industry, and he's not sure is now the time to apply for jobs, or are companies hiring, or should he wait? And generally, I'd like to ask what advice you have for people who, like Bo, are either new in the industry or maybe even coming back to it and haven't been in oil and gas or energy in a while.
Well, I'm going to give away my age. I have 4 kids. They're all in college, and I've stopped actively encouraging them to join the oil field, but I do support them, and at least one of them is going to potentially join into the oil field. I have confidence in the medium term and the long term prospects for our business in the world. I think we've talked about the cycles enough, and we've talked about the latency of how long it takes to make decisions. But I do feel that, and most folks that we read and heard about seem to feel that with generally improving situation with COVID, it may not be as fast as we hope, but we're generally improving there with a vaccine, et cetera. That this business is going to start picking up, and that we're going to see better results. So my advice and people need to get ready. People don't wait. I say it takes a year for Murphy to get back to work again. We can't wait a year and then hire a few people. So I think that college grads or anybody who's interested in the industry should put their name in the hat. Don't be afraid. Don't expect quick results, but at least put your name in the hat and be confident that in the longer, medium and long term, this business is here to stay. There's great jobs available in this industry.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for answering the audience questions. I think just for the sake of time, we'll probably stop there on audience questions, but we'll try to maybe answer some in the comments or get back to those. And as always, thank you so much for the audience for tuning in and asking those. So I'll throw it back to you, Michael.
All right. Well, great. Well, thanks. Yeah, certainly appreciate the questions. Dale, appreciate you sharing your insight. And Assaad, as always, sharing and bringing the inside out, which is aptly why we named the show as such. So we appreciate both of you sharing your perspectives.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Michael, and thanks, Dale.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. All right. Well, as always, if you're watching at home and have questions that we weren't able to ask, feel free to send us an email, or you can comment right here in the chat in this particular episode, and we'll try to respond to your question, even if it's after our show. So appreciate you sticking around with us, and for that, we'll end this part of our show. But if you'd like to stick around in just a moment, we'll have our Insight Out after show with Dale and Assaad and the rest of the production crew. So from all of us here at NOV, thanks for watching and for listening, and we'll talk to you later. All right. Well, great show, everybody. Thank you, Dale, for hanging in with us. Man, I tell you.
That was good.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
I hope I didn't oversell Dale, but I'm pretty sure he overperformed to what I sold even.
So
Oh, come on now. You really scared me there with all of that stuff.
So what? So Dale, how do you and Assaad know each other?
I think that came about at around IEDC general meeting, didn't it?
I think so. Yeah, it was a common friend.
Common friend at NOV who who perhaps unwisely suggested to Assaad that we get in touch. So
very wisely, in fact. Actually, I give kudos to Tim, but I want to say that what triggered kind of my attention to Dale speaking at that event was the $5 barrel. Like we had heard a lot of companies saying, yeah, we can produce for $5, and I'm like, really? Like, does that even exist? But then Dale very clearly explained how that $5 is really a different measure of the barrel that we're really talking about in the break even, which is why really we started off with that.
Yeah, it's just an all-in. It's just a view of what's the all-in cost of the barrel is, as opposed to something else. From a service point of view or a technology provider point of view, presumably you have to consider your R&D cost, among other things, as part of the break-even equation. And just because those dollars were spent in the past doesn't mean they're not still part of the formula. So it is hopefully helpful to look at it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I had another question for you, Dale. We didn't get a chance to ask, and I don't know if the audience knows that we're in the after show. This is not, nobody forgot the live switch on. How do you stay sane in these times? What's your go-to?
Well, myself, you're asking me, huh?
Yeah.
I lean heavily on my family. Lean heavily on my family, which it's good that feel fortunate to have a good relationship there, because if I didn't, that's who I'm stuck with a lot. Right? But it's so important during times like this, COVID and the business environment, to have that link and that involvement, because so many of the hobbies and things that we normally like to do, interacting with others, are somewhat limited.
Mm-hmm.
So the family is key, and the other part, I try very hard to try to preserve some normality in social interactions and whatnot, and they have to be adjusted, and we have to do them differently, but we still try to do them, do those activities. Whether I like to hunt, for example, I like to play golf, so I do these things at a safe distance and wearing masks and all the other things that we need to do. But I have to stay sane. I can't remain locked away.
So Dale, you've had the opportunity, like you said, as many in the industry have, to travel around and see different places. During your travels, have you been able to pick up any additional languages? I know Shelby's trying to get French on lockdown. She's working on it. I've got English, and that's about it.
No, to be honest with you, I haven't. I did what most what most students do, and I studied in high school and college. But I've been fortunate that to discover really that places I've worked, the standard language of doing business is actually English, and some of the countries that I've worked, it's formally English for contract purposes, right? So that's interesting. You ask a question. So in Malaysia, for example, it is the formal language of contracts is English. So we negotiate, we discuss, we commit in English. In Indonesia, it's not. There's one piece of paper with a line down the middle, and it's got Bahasa on one side, and English on the other. But still, I've been fortunate that my business dealings have been able to do them in English. So,
yeah.
I feel I've missed an opportunity there. It's one of my regrets, actually. But
well, you said it yourself. You've got college age kids. I'm sure they'll be more than willing to be a free tutor for you. I'm sure. I'm sure of it.
That's right.
Yeah, I've been joking a little bit that the main reason I'm trying to get my fluency in French is really just so I can talk to one of our brands, BLM. They're kind of mainly in France for interviews, so just so I can talk to them. That makes it a reason to get it. I can be like, oh, I'm getting it for work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope you get a chance soon to go to France and exercise that training and that language skill directly, because that's what makes it so much more fun.
Right, you and me both. I cannot wait to travel again. That's on right up there at the top of my list. Places
you can go to parts of Louisiana. Yeah, it might be a slightly different angle there, or you could go to Canada, but their border's closed too. So you have to be. I guess it's just Louisiana. Sorry.
Yeah, which is fine. That's my whole dad's side of the family is from New Orleans, so I'll go there any day. Hang out, eat some good food.
Yeah.
You can get a little French interaction there as well.
Absolutely.
We're kind of I don't know, maybe turning back with what's coming up. I think we're expecting Q4 results here soon, Dale, from most companies. What are your anticipation about those?
I think you're going to see, hopefully, as an industry, ethically, you're going to see that restraint that you were talking about, actually, in terms of spending and whatnot, come to fruition in terms of the bottom lines of the companies. I know Murphy's has been able to control the balance sheet pretty well, despite dramatic reduction in production, which is what the world needed. So I think our production for the 2020 is going to end up being about 20% lower than we said it would be at the beginning of the year.
Right.
And, but in general, I think the news is good that we've weathered it. Our company has weathered it, not without a lot of pain, personal pain, a lot of people, and business pain as well. But we have weathered it. We'll still be around.
Yep. Well, appreciate the hanging out with us, Dale. It's really good to see you, and maybe next time we talk, we'll make sure Assaad doesn't punt over too many questions, right?
No, that's great.
No, well, it's good. Well, thanks for joining us. It was really good to see you.
It's been great having you, Dale.
Yeah, I really appreciate the invitation. I really do. It's been fun.
Has been.
Absolutely happy to have you.
Take care, y'all.
Okay, you as well.
Thanks.